Hi and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Due to the high interest in the Square lineup video and comments from some of you guys on me including a discontinued Polygon model but not including other discontinued models, I promised and now deliver on a couple of videos covering squares that have been lost in the pages of history. In this video, we'll start from the beginning and move up the timeline until we cover all the discontinued squares and square-inspired models, except the Polygon models that I already covered. Also, as usual, I will cover only one variant of each model, as covering all the variants and all the color options would simply be impossible. We'll start this off with the DW5000C, the first GShock ever made and the origin of what will become the backbone of Casio's success. Introduced in 1983, this model was made using the screwback design, meaning it has a stainless steel case with a screw-in caseback and a resin outer protective bezel and strap. When it comes to functions, this model was very basic, with one alarm, a 60-minute stopwatch, a 12-hour countdown timer, and the backlight was done using that weak incandescent light bulb on the edge of the screen that helped you read the hours and made you guess the minutes. That same year, Casio introduced the WW5100, a G-Shock that featured a wide temperature range LCD, as back then LCDs were very sensitive to that and were unusable and sluggish at low temperatures. Casio solved that on this model, but it lost the light function, while all the other functions stayed the same. This is one of the rarest G-Shocks out there and has to be one of the coolest, despite being completely useless in the dark. The second Wide Temp model was the WW5300 that had all the same functions as the 5100 but with different styling of the watch face, which I personally dislike as it looks like a knockoff. Despite the success that current G-Shocks have, these models didn't sell well, and Casio was thinking about pulling the plug on the whole line. But before they did, they issued one more model, and that model, or more exactly the commercial for that model, changed everything. It's the DW5200 and was featured in the US commercial where a hockey player uses it as a puck and shoots it at the goal where the watch is caught by the goalkeeper and we see the watch still working, suffering no damage. This short yet very effective commercial finally made people realize just how tough these watches are, and I'm sure many of them bought the watch out of curiosity to test the toughness themselves. The sales skyrocketed and the G-Shock line was saved, which is why the DW5200 is nicknamed Hero even today. If it wasn't for its success, we wouldn't have G-Shocks today. As for the functions, they're the same as the original DW5000C as it shares the same module. This is to me at least one of the best looking G-Shocks ever made. Something about the colors and the fonts used make it look just perfect, and I'm sure I will be adding one of these to my collection. This module was used in two other models as well. The DW5500 I mentioned in my previous video, a watch that was the first G-Shock to be mud resistant and also worn by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie Running Man, and DW5400, which had a square face but a round body shape. These were both introduced in 1985. Then in 1987, Casio updated the squares with the DW5600C, better known as Speed, thanks to it being worn by Keanu Reeves in the movie with the same name. This model got an updated module that now had a 24-hour stopwatch and a 24-hour countdown timer. It also featured an alarm, a dual time function, and something called REM function, where you could turn on this little REM indicator on the screen to remind you of something you had to do. A pretty cool little feature missing on today's models. This model came in a few color variants, including a very cool DW1983 that was released in 1993 to celebrate 10 years of G-Shock. The model had all the features of the DW5600C, but the face was styled to look like the first G-Shock, the DW5000C. This was the model that started Casio's tradition of making anniversary models that lasts to this day with the 5000 series I covered in my previous video. The DW5600C stayed in production until 1996 when it was replaced by the DW5600E that I covered as the first model in the Part 1 video. Then came 1988 and Casio released the DW500C, which was a smaller version of the regular square aimed at children. The module used in this was also simpler, as it came with only a 60-minute stopwatch and an alarm. This watch can be viewed as the origin of what will later become a baby G-line. From small, we go to big with the DW5300 that was introduced in 1994. This was a larger looking square with bulkier protection bezel. It looked like the DW5600C on steroids, and it was, as it used the same module. This model sparked a whole range of oversized squares we'll cover in a minute. Even though this model was advertised by Casio as the watch worn by Tom Cruise in the first Mission Impossible movie, someone at the props department probably made a mistake and used the regular DW290 instead. I did a review of that model as well, and it is considered one of the toughest regular Casio watches out there. DW5300 was succeeded by DW6800 in 1995 that used the same styling, but it had a different module, like the one used in the DW290. This module had the same functions as the one in the DW5600E, so an improved backlight instead of the little side bulb, an alarm, a 24-hour stopwatch, and a 24-hour countdown timer. Although these two models were bulky, they're nothing compared to the next lineup, nicknamed Gundam because of their styling. It all started with the DW6400 introduced in 1994. It featured the same module as the DW5600C and the DW5300, but the bezel was a combination of metal and resin, giving it a very futuristic look for the time. This lineup continued with the DW8000 and DW8100 that both used an improved module with modern backlight and all the functions like the modern DW5600E, but also featured a dedicated light button. While the DW8000 used only resin for protection, DW8100 used a combination of metal and resin, just like the 6400. The interesting thing about this lineup is that apart from the DW8160 and DW8060 that had basic functions, the rest of the models came with 3 games of a sort, which is why the upper part of the screen was made in dot matrix style. The games, if we can call them that, were activated by pressing the light button and included a slot machine, a coin toss, and a phrase randomer, something like the Ask the 8-Ball game. This lineup ends with DW8300 that went back to having a regular module like the one found in DW5600E. These models were nicknamed Stargate as they were worn by characters in the Stargate SG-1 series. With these wild models, I would like to complete this episode of Discontinued Squares, and we'll continue some other day with the rest. I would like to thank those of you who commented on my previous video and also brought some of these models to my attention. Thank you all for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons over at Patreon. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and until the next video, bye.